From Amy losing her mom in a car crash to Ty's unexpected death that came after taking a bullet for Fleming. Here are moments from Heartland that broke fans' hearts. Right in the first episode of the series, Amy's world turns upside down when her mother tragically dies in a car crash. The moment comes when Marion tries to travel in a dangerous storm, along with her daughter, to get their horse Spartan back. Once the two get it back though, on their way home, a flash of lightning makes the horse kick the back of the truck, which forces Marion to lose control of the wheels. In a split second, the truck sidetracks and falls straight off a steep hill, eventually crashing into a tree. Now, when Amy wakes up after a few days in the hospital, she not only finds out that her mom has passed away, but that she was also not able to attend the funeral. Naturally, this is truly devastating for her, and she blames herself for not saving her mom. Thing is, Fleming doesn't even get to mourn properly before she has to take over the ranch and handle the responsibilities her mom held for years. Later, though, Amy realizes she's inherited her mom's magical touch with horses, so she channels her pain into working with the horses, especially Spartan. Fans were glad to see her healing herself in the process, but it's still heartbreaking to see the daughter try to manage running a ranch without her role model guiding her. It's clear that Fleming is barely past this trauma when in Season 3, she's yet again put in a position where she's super close to losing another loved one, aka Ty Borden. Except this time both Ty and Scott Cardinal get into a terrible plane crash. What was supposed to be a casual plane ride to go help a horse turns into an absolute nightmare when the two men are flying back to their homes and the plane crashes in the middle of a forest. Thankfully, both of them eventually wake up. But Ty realizes he needs to get help soon because Scott has an actual chunk of metal stuck in his leg. Even though Borden has a head injury, he powers through it and tries to navigate the area to get some help. But things take a dark turn when he realizes they're literally in the middle of nowhere. Then, the situation gets worse when they fail to attract the attention of a chopper passing by, and Scott passes out because of his injury. I gotta say, it was so gut-wrenching seeing Ty desperately try to keep himself and Cardinal alive. And for a moment, many of us thought he wouldn't make it. Thankfully, by the end of the episode, both the men finally get rescued by Amy and her crew. And even though we're relieved, we can't help but let out a few tears when Fleming hugs Borden tighter than ever before. While scenes like these made fans feel incredibly emotional for people reuniting with their loved ones, this show also makes accepting the idea of death into a touching journey. Like the time Ty goes to scatter his dad's ashes in a remote lake. When Jack realizes Borden plans on taking the journey alone, though, he decides to travel with him to keep him company. You see, Bartlett knows the guy had a complicated relationship with his dad, and then having to process his death must have been a whole other roller coaster of emotions. And so even when the two make it to the lake, Jake makes it a point to stand by Bodden's side while he delivers a speech about his dad. Ty admits that for all his faults, his dad sure had a way of making him believe in himself, and that helped him get by all these years.
Maybe he could have made me understand why he did some of the things that he did. Who knows, maybe I could have forgiven him. I just wish I had that chance.
You know how they say, when it rains, it pours. I mean, this beautiful speech had so many of us bawling our eyes out. But what also made fans emotional was the dynamic Borden had with Jack in this scene. It made Bartlett seem more of a father to him than his actual dad ever was. Safe to say that this wasn't the only conflict Ty ended up struggling through his emotions in the show, because the moment he broke things off with Amy has got to be one of the most painful scenes. Basically, in Season 8, their relationship came to a tipping point when Borden found out about Fleming's kiss with Prince Ahmed. On top of that, Ty also realized he'd invited the dude over for dinner once, not knowing the entire time that he was pining for his lover. So, in a very tense scene, when he can't handle the thought of Amy cheating on him, Borden asks for a break. Man, the desperation in his voice tore a hole through millions of hearts. But I gotta say, we all understood where he was coming from when he said Fleming wasn't the same as before, right? And until she could figure out what kind of life she wanted to live, with him in or out of it, they had to spend some time apart.
I have to say this, okay? You've changed.
How have I changed?
You just have. You're not the same girl.
Another reason why this scene broke fans' hearts was because it felt more like a breakup than a break. But people agreed with Ty's choice to create some space between them because it was genuinely sad to see him hurting so much inside, especially when he'd never done anything to stand in Amy's way and had always been there for her whenever she needed him. So in the end, some time apart was crucial for these two to process what they were feeling. Speaking of working through some complicated emotions, even Jack Bartlett has a moment in the show when the ghosts of his past come to haunt him. In season 13, we see this guy going through a lot as he struggles to deal with some painful memories. His family tries their best to help him get through whatever's eating him inside, but he never even tells them what's going on because he believes he needs to work through his issues alone. It isn't until much later we find out that Bartlett left his ranch to compete at a rodeo. At the time, he thought it was no big deal, but while he was gone, his younger sister had to pick up on the ranch where Jack left off. And in a sad turn of events, while she was doing one of her chores on the ranch, an accident happened where the poor girl lost her life. So ever since that day, he's blamed himself for putting his sister in a dangerous position and carried the weight of this guilt around for decades. Honestly, you can tell how deeply this incident affected him, judging by the way he struggled to even talk about it. And even when he finally confided in his family, it was still painful for them to watch him hurting so much and for the family to not be able to do anything, especially because this guy had been his family's rock always and had never failed to support those around him. By the way, it's clear that in this show, family means a lot to everyone. So you can imagine how unbearable it must have been for Amy to lose her husband Ty to a gunshot wound in season 13. Let me collect myself for this one. The stray bullet was actually shot by a poacher, but thanks to Borden stepping in like a knight in shining armor, the bullet only hit Fleming in the shoulder. What the dude didn't realize, though, was that he was shot too. And it wasn't until he rushes his wife to the hospital that a nurse points out he needs to get checked out as well. But while his wife ends up recovering, Ty's condition gets worse when his wound forms an unexpected blood clot. And right at the beginning of season 14, he collapses while leading Spartan back to the barn. To say this scene came as a shock would be an understatement, because we all thought Jack and Amy would be able to get him some help, but it was already too late. In the end, this moment was very difficult for fans to process. After all, Fleming and Borden's relationship had become the true heart of Heartland for over 14 seasons. I mean, we'd seen this couple progress from an on and off teen romance to marriage and parenthood, just when these two were finally getting their happy ending. Tragedy struck again. Oh, and did you know, even the cast had difficulty coming to terms with Ty, no longer continuing with the rest of them. Some fans pointed out that with Borden's death, the heart in Heartland was gone forever. So there you have it. From Ty's unexpected death that comes after taking a bullet for Fleming, to Amy losing her mom in a car crash and instantly having to take over the ranch. These were moments from Heartland that broke fans' hearts.